There have been a lot of people in the recent years moving from consoles to PCs. With that is going to come the change of mouse and keyboard versus a controller and which input you decide to start playing with. To each their own, some people that switch like to stay on controller and others want to learn how to play on mouse and keyboard. Keybinds and mouse sensitivity are very personal to each and every individual. Everyone is going to have a different comfortability or sweet spot. Of course, you can gauge a general idea of what you're looking for by asking your favorite creators for their settings, but it won't be the same and it won't fit you in the same way. In today's video, I'll be showing you some tips and tricks to how to find your sweet spot for mouse and keyboard settings. Before we get into this video, if you guys could hit that subscribe button as we are getting closer and closer to our goal of 20,000 subscribers, I would greatly appreciate that. If this video helps you out, don't forget to hit that like button, share the video to a friend that may have also have difficulty finding their sweet spot for mouse and keyboard, and comment what your settings were before this video and after, and if that helped you improve. Let's get into the video. The first thing I tell everyone who is new to PC gaming or even just getting their first computer in general is to turn off your mouse acceleration. Just follow the steps that I do, go into your PC settings, click on Devices, and then on the left-hand side, click on the tab called Mouse. Now you'll want to scroll down to the related settings and click on Additional Mouse Options. Now click on the pointer options. Uncheck Enhanced Pointer Precision. That will disable the mouse acceleration. Another thing to do while in this tab is in the motion box, make sure your mouse pointer speed is selected at least the 6th notch on the slider. I personally use the 5th because I found that that fits my settings a little better for myself. Now, the reason we disable the mouse acceleration is because it causes inconsistencies with turning while you're in your game. Meaning the slower that you move your mouse, the less it's actually going to move your screen, which, yeah, kind of sounds like it makes sense. Meaning that the slower you move your mouse, the less acceleration there's going to be. And the faster you move it, the more acceleration. That means that if you flick your mouse with the acceleration on, it's actually going to speed up and amplify how much you are moving. With it disabled, you won't get that. So say I move my mouse an inch really quickly, with it disabled, my screen will only move a little bit. But if I move it an inch really quickly, it could double to even triple with the acceleration. Now, those aren't exact numbers as to how much the acceleration does increase, because again, it all is varied off of how fast you actually move your mouse, but it's a relative to understand at least what's going on. You also want to check your mouse software if you use any sort of mouse that has an additional software like Logitech, Razer, Corsair, Red Dragon, any of the mouse brands. Just check if it has a software. Make sure that the acceleration in the software is disabled, like I'm showing you here with my Logitech mouse. Something to keep note of as well is refresh rate. If you're new to PC gaming, refresh rate might be new to you. Most games on console ran originally on 30 FPS. With the newer gen consoles, for the most part, they run at 60 FPS. Meaning if you have a 60 Hz monitor or a 60 Hz TV, you can play them at the native 60 FPS. In the PC world, you're typically going to be gaming on a monitor, and the refresh rate is your FPS essentially. It's how many times your screen refreshes per second. Now, if you're excited and had just purchased a high refresh rate monitor, say a 144 Hz monitor for example, you're going to want to go into your settings and make sure that it's actually enabled. So first, right-click on your desktop, click on Display Settings, and scroll down to the Advanced Display Settings tab. There, you can adjust your monitor refresh rate. Now we're going to head back over to our mouse software and talk about DPI. DPI is your dots per inch. It's another controller for the speed of your mouse, essentially. I personally, amongst others, will recommend a DPI setting anywhere from 400 to 1200. I typically don't go anything more than 1000 myself, and I don't go anything lower than 600 either. I personally play on a DPI of 600, as I found that to be my sweet spot. This will also differ depending on how much space you have for your mouse to move, and if you prefer to use mouse movement with your wrist or mouse movement by larger movements with your forearm. In particular, you're going to be wanting to use your forearm for the majority of your movements and use your wrist to make the smaller adjustments. That'll give you a more precision when playing in-game. It's going to take a while to find out your right sensitivity and your DPI, especially when compared to your in-game sensitivity. These two settings go hand in hand when it comes to your precision and accuracy in-game. With that being said, let's move on to your in-game sensitivity. Your in-game sensitivity will differ, of course, depending on the factors that I stated with the DPI and physical mouse space you have. Typically, some people will tell you that you should be able to do a full 360 turn from left to the rightmost area of your physical mouse space. Now, after years of playing with mouse and keyboard, I don't find that to be the case in most scenarios. In fact, what I would recommend is from your left side to your right side of your comfortable mouse movement area, you should be able to do at least a 180-degree turn. Going a little further, not bad, but just make sure that you're not doing a full 360 with your left to right movement. Because honestly, it's kind of unnecessary, and in the sense, you're going to have a higher DPI or a higher in-game sensitivity in order to do so, which is going to make your precision less accurate. It is all going to be based around your comfortability, though, and how precise you can be with your settings. So playing around with your DPI and your in-game sensitivity is going to be challenging. You're going to want to make sure that you can also track your targets in a more precise manner, because if you have your sensitivity too high, you're not going to be able to actually track them and their movements through your reticle as often or as precise. Initially, this is going to be extremely hard for most, especially whenever you're switching from controller to mouse and keyboard and now playing with these new mouse and keyboard settings. But with time and practice, getting used to these settings, you'll start to see the improvements. Another thing that's going to affect your sensitivity in-game, or seems to affect your sensitivity in-game, is your field of view. Your field of view, or FOV, for the majority, people like to play on the max setting. Now, it's not necessarily the best case to play on the max setting, even though you can see a wider range of screen space, because objects and enemies are now going to be seemingly smaller. They have the same hitbox size and everything of the sort, but your reticle is much larger in comparison to how the actual player model seems. With the enemy players appearing smaller, it's going to be a lot harder to hit them. The max FOV for Destiny 2 in particular is 105. I have found that anywhere from 80 to 90 for Destiny 2 is the sweet spot. I personally play on 85. This differs game to game also. I will have a video coming soon talking about FOV a little bit more in depth and go over the pros and cons of having a low FOV and a high FOV. Getting back to the sensitivity, I personally play on a lower sensitivity, around 5 to 6 sensitivity while playing Destiny. It helps because I can actually use my arm as the full movement, and then if I make an under precise shot or I accidentally go overshooting, I can use my wrists to make the smaller corrections. I play on a 600 DPI, like I stated before, and a 5 in-game sensitivity, as well as a 0.7 in-game ADS sensitivity. Unfortunately, with Destiny, there's no decimal system. Otherwise, I would probably be playing on like a 5.4 or 5.5 because 5 sensitivity is a little slow, but 6 is a little fast. But I sit comfortably on 5. I have found that sitting on 5, I'm able to make better corrections whenever I under-aim rather than sitting on 6 and trying to make backwards adjustments if I over-aim. That is going to vary for person to person as well. Something to take note on also is your in-game graphic settings. Now, for the majority, this doesn't really matter. A lot of people like to see the pretty vibrance of most games, and they'll run everything on the highest settings their computer can handle. For a lot of competitive gamers, a lot of them will actually play on lower in-game settings, or even the lowest in-game settings, rather than playing on the highest. This will give them an FPS boost in most games, which in turn gives them better reaction time and response time. But again, at this point, it's kind of primarily preference, and it's also based on what your monitor refresh rate is anyway. If you're already hitting your monitor cap at what your current in-game settings are at, then there's not really much need to change them. But if you're lacking a bit and say you have a 144 Hz monitor and you're hitting around the 120, maybe even 110 area, lowering your settings might give you a benefit. Now let's talk about sensitivity training. If you're unable to figure out exactly where your sensitivity can gauge, this training system might help. If you're able to grab a friend, have them sit in one spot in a private match, and just strafe left to right while trying to keep your reticle on their head. If you're unable to grab a partner, that's fine. Just find a spot on a wall, a corner, a box, whatever it is that you can make as a marker, and do the same thing. Keep your reticle as close to or on point on that marker as you can, and strafe from left to right with some variance. Then try to adjust your sensitivity based on your performance. If you find yourself trying to catch up to the spot, you might have to increase your sensitivity. But if you find yourself over-adjusting and going past it while trying to keep your reticle on the center, then you might want to turn your sensitivity down a little bit. Another great way to get used to your sensitivity settings is once you found something that you're a bit more comfortable with, jump into some PvE activities where you're up against some AI combatants who have random moving patterns, and it'll help you get a better grasp on your new settings. This can also go for PvP as well, but you're going to find yourself getting pretty frustrated pretty quickly because Again, you're not exactly the most comfortable or suited for mouse and keyboard just yet. You may also notice once you switch from playing with controller to mouse and keyboard that some weapons actually might feel quite a bit different from how they did whenever you were playing on controller. With all this in mind, it's going to take some time to get used to playing on a new input, especially if it's for a game that you've been playing on a single input for a long duration, like playing on controller for Destiny for several years. But if you're looking to get better on this new input, you're going to have to fight the urges to go back and forth. It'll take a lot longer to progress, and you won't notice the improvements if you keep going back to controller whenever you get frustrated. And that brings us to the end of this video. If this video was helpful at all, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as we're making our way down to 20,000 subscribers, and to keep up to date with more Destiny 2 content and tips coming in the future. I'll see you guys next time.